Welcome to The Beacon, where we shine a light on the businesses and leaders making Western New York stronger. On this show, we talk with individuals running teams and companies in Buffalo and beyond. The ones developing top-notch talent, managing the pressure of growth, and making hard calls every day to keep their people and their businesses moving forward. Our guests bring stories about decisions, projects, and strategic moves they've been part of, the technology investments that paid off, the hires that changed everything, the moments that defined their careers, and the principles that will matter for years to come. The leaders we talk to on this show have walked the walk. They come here to show you the steps they took along the way. At Lighthouse, we believe technology and talent are the things that drive every business to success. You can usually trace any issue to people, process, or technology, and joining us at The Beacon is one way you can keep learning and keep growing. I'm your host, Joe Ray. Let's get to work. We started The Beacon with 2 interviews with friends of Lighthouse, 2 shining examples of how we keep the humanity in our work and tech for years to come. Go check those out with Dan Miner and Pauline McEwen if you haven't yet. This week, we bring it back to home. Our very own Brenda Czyz is here. She's going to show you how we bring the human touch to our work of recruiting and placing technology talent with businesses in Buffalo and beyond. The problem of helping businesses find the technology talent they need requires a layered solution. We explore 2 of those layers today: designing a hiring process that encourages fast feedback and decisions, and then finding the balance between speed and quality in recruiting. You can't sacrifice one for the other. The people your business needs are out there. The hard work is finding them at the right time, then moving from screening to interview to offer before another company makes a quicker hiring decision. Hope you enjoy the chat with Brenda. If you want to check out more conversations like this, make sure you're subscribed at getthebeacon.com or subscribe to the podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you like to listen. Here we go. It's episode 3 of The Beacon with Brenda Czyz. Thanks for joining us. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to The Beacon podcast. Joe Ray is here, and I'm here with Brenda Czyz from our team at Lighthouse Technology Services. How you doing, Brenda?
I'm doing great. Hi, everyone.
I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you.
It's going to be a great day. It's
really
game
is.
1 of round 2 of the Sabres playoffs.
That's right.
I'm hoping it's going to be a great day.
We're ready.
We're going to be posting
going
this.
to be a great
Yes.
day. Let's manifest it.
Yes. I think we'll be to like game 3 or 4 by the time that this comes out. But hopefully the series is going well. Speaking to the future Buffalo Sabres, lock it down. You got this. Let's take on Montreal.
Go Sabres.
Wanted to do a Sabres-themed icebreaker because I'm like, it's that time of year. I was thinking about this the other day. We were talking about this, and I was like, wait, this is kind of an interesting analogy of like, if you had to look at the Buffalo Sabres, past or present,
Yes.
could you pinpoint someone who you're like, yes, like the way this person plays hockey, like that's my work style, like that's my person.
Oh, my gosh. I kind of laugh about this because, you know, my all-time favorite player is Rob Ray, but that kind of dates me. And I'm not a fighter, so
Okay.
not that. But I think, honestly, I think I would say Benny. I mean, he's
Yeah.
relentless in, you know, just pursuing everything. And I think that he fights for his team really well. He's never going to give up, and he always wants to get the puck in the net. So I'm kind of that person that I just feel like I have a really high energy and I'm constantly going to go after it. So
Yeah, what is it they say? He's like a dog.
He
Like
is.
him and Doan, they talk about each other.
he's never
Zach
going to
Benson and
stop.
Josh Doan, they're both dogs.
So send me your
yeah,
unicorns.
they keep working. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But they're always working. They're always working. For me, I was thinking about like when I played, like Joe Thornton played for Boston for a while, and he would always play against the Sabres. So that's kind of like who I emulated. And like, there's not really a guy like that on the Sabres today who's got that, like the size, the face-offs, the playmaking. Hint, hint, they could probably use somebody like that. Off-season conversation. Anyways, Matthias Samuelsson is a guy that I look at
Great
that
player.
had like a little bit of everything that you need from a top defenseman, but hadn't really put it all together. And then found the right opportunity and the right coaching, and just something clicked last summer that he just kicked it into another gear.
Yeah.
You know, whether it was second year in Lindy's system or, you know, just kind of, you know, realizing this is time to get going and come into who he is. And he's been doing amazing. And the team really needed it. And that was a big reason for the success. So,
Yeah. I agree, Joe. You are amazing.
oh, shucks. All right. I mean, we could talk about the Sabres all day, but let's talk recruiting for a little bit.
Sure.
Is that good? Yeah. Let's get into that. I really wanted to talk to you because we've looked a lot at our own internal hiring process, but obviously we do hiring for clients every day, every hour, and really just thinking about what makes an effective hiring process. A lot of the challenges that we sometimes hear come up is top talent moves off the market too fast. Something happens.
For sure.
Maybe they lose a good candidate and things like that. Do you have any stories of like, hey, you know, maybe somebody was interviewing somebody they really liked and then they lost that candidate? You know, what happened? Why did that happen? Those kinds of things.
Sure. I mean, we see this happen more often than you'd think. We have somebody gets to the interview process with a hiring manager, they'll talk to them, and then the immediate feedback is they're amazing, right? And we really want to go with this candidate. And then the hiring manager gets a little bit busy, and then there's a stakeholder that's involved in the interviewing process that might say, oh, hold on a second, I want a second opinion. And then we have to schedule another round. And then what ends up happening essentially is the candidate, before, the hiring manager can extend the offer, accepts another offer at another location. And that is just painful to watch, because painful on both sides, because the candidate really wanted that job and the hiring manager really wanted that person, but they just waited too long. So, and then essentially what ends up happening is the hiring process starts over again. So you're not only losing time, losing quality, because usually that second round of candidates is just not going to hit the mark. So sad to see.
Yeah. And when we talk about the timing here, slight spinoff, but just looking at how we do, there's kind of two different sides of what we do.
Yeah.
There's direct hire recruiting, which is the very straight, we do the recruiting, the screening, the interviewing, and then we place someone at a company. But we also do the contract staffing. And that's a lot more timely, I would assume, because it's, large businesses have projects they need to keep on track.
Mhm.
They need to get the top tech talent in really quickly. It seems like there would be a little bit more need for speed on that
Yes.
side almost. Is that something you see too?
There is a little bit more need for speed, because the reason that they're requisitioning a contract worker is because they have a project that they need to get done. There's a timeline on it, but at the same time, they're working 40 hours a week and they're trying to get their things done. So trying to just navigate the process of working and going through the hiring process is tough a lot of times for contract roles, but they know in the back of their mind that that's going to make their life easier once that contract
It's a juggling
starts.
act, right?
Yes.
Of like we have a
Absolutely.
lot of empathy for this stuff, right? These are
We do.
people who hiring is not their full-time job, but they know that they need to do it to make the work.
For
basically.
sure. For sure. Every day they're struggling, right? Between that balance of, oh, I have to get this done, but I really need somebody to help. So hopefully we can coach them a little bit on, setting that timeline and set the expectations and kind of taking some ownership for that. So yeah, that's we pride ourselves in doing something like that with the hiring managers.
Yeah, thinking about this too, like these are very rational decisions when people might take longer in the hiring process, whether it's somebody comes in and needs to have input on the final decision, whether it's somebody decides that they want to add like another technical round or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like these are all very real things. Maybe they've been burned by a previous candidate that applied for a job and started and something like that.
Right.
Why do companies take longer and stretch out the hiring process?
Well, I think initially they're looking for or have that unicorn mindset where they want everybody to check every box, right? Because that's what you start off with. And that can sometimes delay the process. And then there's sometimes too many decision makers that are involved, and, they're more afraid of like a bad hire than no hire. So what ends up happening is, ironically, the hesitation kind of causes a different kind of risk. It's losing the right people. So the best candidates, they're not going to be on the market for weeks. They're going to be on the market for days. So trying to work through that process initially with your team and kind of setting expectations, ownership, timelines, really looking through the checklist to decide what is a must-have versus a nice-to-have. Those are really important things to do, because I know that you always are going to start off with a list of 10 things that you absolutely think the perfect candidate's going to have. But if you find somebody that has 8 or 9 of those, and the 10th thing is actually something that you could train pretty quickly, you're going to want to grab that person before they're off the market, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the market, actually, I could spin it back to the Sabres a little bit. I just thought about this as you were talking back here. Like you look at free agency in the summers,
Yes.
and the top people are gone within 3 hours,
Right.
maybe. There's a lot of work that goes into that. Maybe there's an allegory there too of like, if you know you're going to have a need for somebody, to be proactively reaching out and figuring out where those people are located, when they might be available, what offer you could make to them, is a different way to think about growing your team, as opposed to getting into a project and realizing, hey, we need 2 more people. Let's go scramble and hire. And then that's when an NHL team might be going to free agency and just, we got to see who's available here.
For sure. For sure. I mean, the best of candidates will always tell you, I've had 15 people reach out to me while I'm on a project already, right? So because word of mouth is a real thing.
Yeah.
Even in here in Buffalo, we're a small community, people know. So you'll have candidates that already have 5 people reaching out to them for potential positions that are coming down the road. So when you have somebody like that in your back pocket, you really want to place them in the best places. And, that's what we do here at Lighthouse. We're
Yeah.
always building a pipeline, talking to people, making sure that we know where they are and what they're doing and when they're going to be available. So it's kind of it's a game of, it's actually fun. I really enjoy
Yeah.
my job.
It's a game of timing too, but you
It
also
is.
get to know good people along the way.
It
That
is.
makes it fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we talked about what are some of the issues that come up in hiring processes, but maybe we bring it back to, hey, what does a well-designed process look like? I know a lot of the steps are generally sourcing, screening, interviewing, onboarding, but like, what does a well-designed process really look like?
Sure. We actually just went through an exercise like this here at Lighthouse, right? So, when we're hiring people, we wanted to make sure that we had a really well-developed process. And part of that was making sure that the job description actually matched the job that we were looking for, talking about what we really needed to make sure that that's reflected in the job description, and then making sure that everybody who was on the interview team was aware of what this person would be doing so that they could
Mm-hmm.
actually assess their skills in that area. And also that everybody's kind of in alignment as to what that person's going to be doing, because one person's idea of what A might be wanting them to do is not necessarily Joe's idea of what they want Brenda to be doing, right? So I think that initial alignment on the job description and what they're going to be doing is key.
Mm-hmm.
And then what you're going to do is you're going to set up a criteria for your team to really be evaluating people on. So here at Lighthouse, we use an EOS process called right person, right seat. We want to make sure that the people who are in those seats actually have the skills that are necessary to do them, but also a good cultural fit, and really hits all of the targets that we're looking for. They're accountable, they're excited, they're motivated, they have the energy to do the job, right? So one of the things that we do after interviewing is we'll have a really quick and fast feedback loop. So we sit down, we talk about the candidate right immediately after so we can get initial thoughts on that. We talk about, do they get it? Do they want it? Do they have the capacity to do it?
Mm-hmm.
So that we can then make an assessment pretty quickly, because we do walk the walk here. We don't just talk the talk. So when it comes to getting quality candidates, even on our internal teams, we want to make sure that that process is aligned with a speedy process for the candidate. We want to make them feel valued, and make sure that everybody on the team is definitely on the same page. And then decision and offer, you have one person that has ownership over that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's the person who's going to be ready to extend that offer and be ready to have somebody come on board. And you have a 30, 60, 90-day plan set up for them already so that you can kind of walk through everything that, the expectations on the job, and also give them, feedback on throughout the whole process of when they start with you,
Yeah.
and those types of things. Yeah.
Yeah. What does that feedback process feel like for you? Because I've been a part of that in terms of like giving feedback, and what you're interviewing somebody for is very different from when I interview somebody for Lighthouse, and like what I'm gauging and things like that. So as the recruiter, then where do you take the feedback? And sometimes it's not always unanimous too. Sometimes there's conflicting opinions about people as well too.
Sure.
Like, what does that look like for you after we get out of that debrief? And then you've got to figure out, okay, here's how we're assessing some similar or conflicting opinions, and here's where we go next.
Yeah. So I think, again, initially setting up with your team and making sure that everybody's on the same page as to what this person's going to be doing is going to be very helpful, because usually we can come to some sort of unanimous decision. But if there isn't one, you're always going to, contrast and compare. It usually comes down to two candidates, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're talking about which one is better here, better there, and then you kind of make a decision culturally about which person is going to fit in better with the team. You also think about skill sets, which one is trainable, which one is not so trainable, how quickly you can get somebody up to speed. And then throughout the process, once you do extend that offer, it's really important to then receive some feedback from everybody on your team as well as to, how well are they doing, so that you can. I'm a very transparent person. I feel like this when I'm screening people. I feel like this after they're done with an interview. If a hiring manager shares feedback with me, I am absolutely going to share that with the candidate. I think that's so necessary in today's world. Like, so many times I've had a candidate say to me, thank you for just being transparent with me, because it might be as simple as, hey, you showed up in a t-shirt for a job interview where you know that it's an office setting and it should be business casual. If nobody tells you, it's kind of that same thing we were talking about a little bit earlier. Do I have broccoli in my teeth? If you don't tell somebody about, their feedback and give them honest feedback about how they present to people, or, hey, you should probably elaborate more on this the next time that you have an interview, they're never going to learn. So I am
Mhm.
all about transparency.
Yeah, and that's a huge thing too for people who are, maybe younger millennials or Gen Z, like these generations that are really coming into the workforce.
Yeah.
They might not know some of those certain nuances, just whether it was because of COVID and different work environments, and maybe they learned some different norms and habits and things like that.
Yeah.
But they're also super receptive to feedback. Like every time I meet people out in the community
Yeah.
or go back to UB and speak on a college campus, something like that, like people want like detailed feedback. Like they want it, like they want to get better.
Yeah, for
They want,
sure. I
yeah,
recently had a new college grad that I met with, and
nice.
she was the
Yeah.
sweetest thing, but her LinkedIn had nothing on it. So we sat there for a few minutes. Again,
Yeah.
she asked the question at the end. She said, "Can you please just transparently give me feedback on how I can do better in, my next interview?" And it was,
Mhm.
"Let's talk about this. Let's get you set up on LinkedIn." And then funny enough, immediately she started reaching out to everybody here at Lighthouse to start networking with
Let's
folks.
go.
So
Perfect.
she was ready. Yeah. And she was very
Yeah.
open to receiving that kind of
Yeah.
feedback.
We love to see people who are proactive.
For sure.
Yeah. There is the very real need for hiring speed and quick timelines and fast feedback, like we've been talking about too. There's also very real concerns about candidate fraud, people using AI in the process, all these things that you do really need to be judicious and take your time and make sure you're hiring the right person who has the right skills as well. So that's a balancing act. Like how do you
For sure. I
recommend
mean,
people approach
speed and
that?
quality are not opposites, Joe. It's just you need to have that, clear process to actually improve both, right? So the key is being intentional about maybe what you're validating. So we talked a little bit about making sure everybody's on the same page, but also like validating what the candidate is presenting. Are they actually hands-on? Can they explain what they've built? Do they think through problems in real time? So if you're asking the right questions, I think you don't need 6 rounds of interviews, right?
Hmm.
So if you're ready for that, you just need the better interviews for
And,
sure.
and just getting the clarity, getting through the resume to the things you actually need, the skills that your team needs.
Yes.
When we look at the early part of the hiring process, so there's sourcing, obviously, you have a job description, a job posting, you're looking for candidates who meet specific skills and meet specific criteria. When you're into the screening phase of being able to look through someone's resume and then ask them questions about, hey, like you were saying, what do you actually know?
Yeah.
What have you actually done? What projects have you worked on? Those kinds of things. How does the team approach technical screening and going beyond the resume?
Sure, sure. So we want to go beyond like the surface level questions, right?
Mhm.
So anyone can talk about the tools that are listed on their resume because that's what they did. You can use AI to put that on your resume, right? So, but what we want to understand is what did you actually do? Give me the actual story about behind what you did. What problems did you solve? What would you do differently? We have those conversations with them so that we can understand, were they really involved in this, or did they just list the tool because their, neighbor had it and they looked at it once?
Mhm.
So we'll ask the candidates to walk through real scenarios, architectural decisions that they made, any debugging challenges that they had, trade-offs that they made, because sometimes that will really tell you whether or
Sure.
not they've used multiple tools.
Yeah, that decision making, like thinking about, hey, this versus that, and making the considerations, and then you get to see how they think. Yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely, and you can tell pretty quickly who's actually done the work, versus who's repeating something that they've heard.
yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah, for sure. Can I spin a little bit here, looking at the resume part too, because I do imagine there are some people out there who are really talented, worked on a ton of great projects,
Mhm.
not great at translating that onto their resumes.
Sure.
But if you were to get them in an interview, they could talk through exactly what they did, their role on the team, the problem, the solution, the outcome. Are there ways that you've seen people maybe structure some of that stuff on a resume that catches your eye and gives a little bit more context to, hey, this person's actually done the work. They've got the skills we need for this role?
Yes, for sure. So many times you'll see a resume, and even I'm getting this feedback from hiring managers a lot too.
Yeah, nice.
Somebody creates an AI generated resume, and it just has these bullet points that say, um, you know, this tool, that tool, ABC tool. They really want to know what you did,
Hmm.
right? So giving them a quick summary underneath each role that you have on what you specifically did, not what your team did, but what you actually did. So the project that you were working on, why were you working on it? What were you attempting to, solve in this process?
Hmm.
And then what ends up happening is in the conversation, they can see kind of what you've worked on previously in your resume, and then they can do a deeper dive into, again, some of those challenges that you faced, right? Because there's no way that everything went smoothly.
Sure. Yeah.
That hiring manager wants to know what were the challenges that you faced and how did you overcome them, right?
Mhm.
So you can talk to the actual project, and they want to know that you weren't just a task taker. They want
Sure.
to know that you
Mhm.
actually understood in the business how this helped the business. So some of those are some of the things that you want to list on your resume, like how did it impact business? Why were you even doing this project? So
Sure.
yeah, that will
Yeah.
help.
Adding context always helps.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. We got to have the AI conversation because I feel
Uh,
like it's infiltrating everything. I hate it. I know. Sorry.
it's
But
definitely changed the landscape, Joe,
this is what the people are talking about.
for
Like
sure.
they want to know. Like,
Yeah.
what have you seen of, how are people using it in good ways? How are people using it in bad ways?
Yeah.
Any and all stories are good.
Oh my goodness.
I'm
So
sure we could go for hours.
yeah, we could.
Yeah.
And we talk about this every single day, right?
Mhm.
It's definitely impacting everything that we're doing. So, we're seeing AI assisted interviews because they're using a bot while they're on the interview. For those of you who don't know what that means, it's, you know, during the interview process, they have um, software tools out there where they will listen to the question and then fire back the answer for you, and you're just literally reading it back to the hiring
Jeez.
manager. So helping hiring managers to kind of detect that sort of thing. We see it in resume inflation where, they just pop their stuff in and it just copies a million other resumes that are out there in the world. And then even cases where the person interviewing isn't the same person who shows up to work. So we've definitely had to adapt here, and of course our clients have had to adapt as well, right? So it's more conversational. As much as we talk about AI, our job is to take it back to more of the human touch, right? So we want to have conversational interviews, we want to have unscripted interviews. Those things are harder to fake.
Mhm.
Many times the software tools will be thrown off completely if you just have a conversation with somebody.
Wait, tell me about this. This is wild.
So we actually have multiple times caught candidates who were using AI bots to answer interview questions.
Yeah.
And it's just as simple as asking them a question during the process, like you're listening to them and then you might interrupt them for a second because they said something interesting and you ask them a follow-up question and then AI gets thrown off completely and they don't even know where they
What?
ended up. So it's hilarious because you catch them immediately because they're just like, what?
Similar to how I just interrupted you and brought you on the stand,
Yes,
but you're a human being and we had a conversation
exactly,
and we handled
exactly.
that
And
well.
going
Yeah.
back to the question initially,
Yeah.
right, is the hardest part because
Yeah.
then AI has already started to generate other, answers for these questions. So,
Oh.
deeper follow-ups because
Mhm.
they'll start to say something and that's when you kind of interrupt and say what or how or why because then it throws off the whole bot in the process. And another thing you're always looking for is we do all of our interviews either in person or via video, right? We
Mhm.
don't do phone calls anymore. That's just way out there.
You want to see a face.
You
Yeah.
want to see a
Mhm.
face. You absolutely want to have that human interaction with somebody to say,
Yeah.
hey, are you reading off of a script? And many times what candidates don't realize is I'm wearing glasses today, you're wearing glasses today, but you can literally see their screen. I mean, it's kind of
And
hilarious.
just the walls of text flying by.
Yes,
Oh no.
absolutely. So, or are they reading? You can
Sure.
absolutely tell when somebody's reading versus
Sure.
answering the question. So it's more of a, you definitely want to have that face-to-face interaction and be able to see them, but you also want to be able to have a conversation and go back to the human touch.
Which, and then, going back to some of our earlier points too, conversations do take time
Yes.
and you have to make the time on your calendar, but then you're balancing, we can't have 3 different people taking time over 3 or 4 weeks to have conversations necessarily. We got to
Right.
move quick and know what the signs are as you're going so that you can spot red flags quickly, get that into your feedback loop and then keep moving. And,
Absolutely. And
yeah.
one of the things that I always tell people is trust your gut. I
Yeah.
mean, we've been doing this for a long time. So with recruiting comes these little flags. We call them yellow flags, red flags, right? You're always going to trust your gut because you've been doing this for so long. You can
Yeah.
tell when somebody's just kind of giving you that
Yeah.
answer that's not necessarily their own.
Yeah. And even just if you're a human having a conversation,
Yeah.
like you can probably tell pretty quickly whether people have actually worked on a project that they're talking about or not
Yes.
by
Yeah.
the level of detail and just their comfortability of how they talk too.
For
I
sure.
imagine.
And then
Yeah.
if you do a deeper dive into the question and they're
Mhm.
like, but they can't really articulate what they've done, Yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely a red flag.
Okay.
Throwing the flag.
The more you know.
Yes.
The more you know. Nice. Oh, and then actually,
Which leads into the next question.
which leads into the next question. That's a great thing, Brenda. Thank you. Co-producing as we go here.
Teed you right up.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me about some red flags that, maybe some people who don't have the technology specific recruiting expertise might miss if they're recruiting for whether it's a software engineering role or something in cybersecurity and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So 100% vague answers, right?
Mhm.
They're going to use buzzwords that they hear out there, but they're not necessarily going to be able to go into any depth on the answer themselves. They can't go deeper because they can only explain the surface, not the why. Because AI is going to give them a surface level response, right? And going deeper into the project and talking a little bit more about the project and getting information on, from those people on what they actually did, it's going to be helpful. Over polished responses is a huge red flag.
Okay.
Because you and I are having a conversation. If suddenly my conversation changes and all of a sudden I'm giving you textbook answers versus a real conversation, those over polished, when your communication style changes drastically from the initial conversation to answering a question about technical skills, that's just absolutely a red flag for everybody to watch for sure. And then, a mismatch in the communication versus their experience. Their resume says that they're senior, but their answers feel a little bit more junior. Those are the kinds of things that you're going to watch for with flags. And one of the biggest ones is definitely when someone can't explain something that they supposedly owned.
Okay.
Right? So if they say on a resume, I'm a senior level, developer and I owned this project or I led this project or I mentored many other junior developers and they can't explain why they did it or what they did, it's a huge red flag for sure.
Yeah.
If you can build it, then you can break it down simply for somebody else to understand what you did and how you did it.
Exactly. And going back to EOS, because we were talking about that a little bit too, in terms of our process and like right people, right seat evaluation.
Yeah.
Like owning something is a very specific thing that we can tell when people do, because they've typically brought other people into the process at some degree to get the thing done. They've built a really deep expertise around why we're doing that thing, why we're putting the time into it, why we're prioritizing it, that it's one of the most important things to the business.
For sure.
There's so much rigor there, I think is the word that I want to use, that like you can tell instantly if somebody hasn't really owned it to like meet the word and what that means.
And that's actually a great point, Joe, is that, if they've led it, then they also know who else they need on their team in order to produce the final result. So many times just asking them questions about who they pulled in, because if they didn't own that process, they're not even going to know who was involved in the process. Yeah.
Brenda, this was a lot of fun.
It was great.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
If people want to connect with you or find you around the community, I know you're involved in a couple of different groups and whatnot. Where can people connect with you?
Sure. So I'm the Vice President of Technology for PMI Buffalo. Nice. So I'm always involved in anything that's PMI related. And then I do love to attend any of the women in tech events. I feel like as a woman, I have to empower other women. And I think that those are great opportunities for people in technology to meet, network, and have conversations. And honestly, just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to have coffee anytime.
Love it. Shout out to the women in tech group too, especially. Like they always do a great job of bringing just smart people together.
They really do.
PMI too. I'm sorry, I haven't been to as many of their events. But
it's very similar. We have a lot of very strong women in PMI as well. So
love it. Yeah, Pauline was just our last guest on the show.
She was. She's wonderful. Yeah.
Really great. Thanks, Brenda.
Joe.
Thanks so much for joining me.
I appreciate you.
Of course.